your horses.
Pitter patter, let's get at her. It is another episode of the Manely Broncos Podcast, and I am your host alongside with my other host, Brandon Miller, and we are going to be talking about the training camp battles. So we're going to be talking training camp battles, and from camp battles, we'll talk about people that might be on the roster bubble. So we'll talk about that, and then we're going to dive into this little thing that seems to be, should I say, breaking news throughout the NFL world, which is new jerseys, right, Brandon? Like new jerseys, people that are almost like treating it like a schedule release video, right? Like schedule release video, and basically hyping up the fact that they are new uniforms, new helmets. Okay. I'm obviously referencing the Seattle Seahawks video that happened today.
So I know I fucking hate how good the Seahawks throwback uniforms are. What up, Ty? Okay, let me just make sure I'm on the same page here, because like maybe I'm behind the times or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm living under a rock. I'm Patrick Starr. Is everyone doing this? Is this just like a thing that every team is getting to do this season, or what?
It does feel like it's a lot more than usual, doesn't
it?
Is it
like just like some teams, because like it feels like everyone's doing it. That's why I'm like, is there something going on? Was there like a raffle, or do some teams get to do this? Is everyone doing this? Like, what's going on?
Did every single team get the memo from Roger Goodell? Like, yeah. Cool. Because what is it like? The Tennessee Titans are getting ready to release this weekend. The Minnesota Vikings released theirs. The Cleveland Browns released theirs, which is basically a new helmet, right? And
are they like for like away games, or for just like alternates, or like what is it? I literally still can't even tell. Like there's so much. It just happens. I just see it pop up. And I'm oh shit. Okay.
I'm guessing it's somewhere between the away and the alternate. Like
the Browns did it. Yeah. Did anyone else in the AFC West do it yet? Or the first ones?
I think would be the first one.
This is weird. I don't get it. I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm just like, what is happening?
Well, we'll talk about it later. But
we'll talk about it. We'll talk
about it later. But the thing that's sad is it's all setting up for the Broncos the way it is are going to be the last ones. So they better not be disappointing us, in terms of something, as being the last ones. So if they are the last ones, just please don't disappoint us. And if so
they're going to open Pandora's box though, because like if they go out and they're like, oh yeah, this is our like, and they have this, sick, we'll get into it, but they have this like sick throwback D on a white helmet with like, I don't know, whatever. It looks sweet. And they're like, yeah, this is our alternates for, 2 games. Everyone's going to be like, just bring it back full time. Like everyone's going to be so pissed because they get to see it for like 2 games and then it's gone again. And people are going to riot.
Yeah. Anybody that is checking out the Manely Broncos podcast, I
feel like you're going to suck. Just kidding.
Jeez, you went there. By the way, for anybody that is going to get to the Manely Broncos podcast and you are checking it out on Twitter, one, we appreciate you guys. We really do appreciate you guys. Sadly, though, the comments, if you guys are contributing on there, will not be seen on this broadcast. So you guys will have to hop on to the MHRT Network page of YouTube. Subscribe, please, if you would. And feel free to chime in on the comment section. If
you're on Threads, you're the only one.
If you're on Threads. But first off, before we dive into obviously our training camp battles and stuff like that, Brandon, how you doing, buddy? You doing good? Did you get a chance to play some more golf recently? I mean, like, what's new?
No, I have not golfed recently, although I desperately wanted to this last weekend. I had a 4-day weekend, which was kind of nice. Like, it wasn't actually a vacation. Like, I'm moving in a month, so I just was packing my entire apartment. I'm like so tired right now. I need to take like a nap and then like drink some prune juice. I'm an old man, apparently. I'm an old man now. Old man yells at cloud. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm just like exhausted all the time.
Yeah. Josh is lying, Brandon. Just FYI, Josh is lying. He's in his.
He already has one. You didn't know that?
He's trolling. He's in his troll phase right now. Yeah, I was really thankful to take the day off on Tuesday spent some time with family, and we had the chance to play Plum Creek yesterday. In the scorching heat that it was. Like, it was really hot yesterday. Like, I think it got to be like in the, almost the mid 90s yesterday. And, thankfully I played well, but like, yeah, it's tough playing in that kind of weather. But
no, he already has that tramp stamp. He lost a different bet that we did. I bet him that he couldn't go a single episode without opening with Pitter Patter, Let's Get At Her. And he failed.
And I definitely failed.
Where did you play? Plum Creek?
Yeah, Plum Creek. Yeah,
I don't think I ever played there.
You'll have to. It's been revamped now. Like, it's almost like refurbished, if you will, revamped. And
dude, I'm hyped. I'm gonna golf so much this summer. Like, the last time I played, this is gonna sound funny because
you suck.
Whatever. Okay, but I'm getting a lot better. Like, I'm better than the last time we played. I know, like, seriously, I had this when I went 2 weeks ago. I had like some of the best drives I've ever hit. One, I think it was like a 375 for a 400-yard par 4. I don't remember, but like, opening tee shot, I'm like, I get it down to like I'm 80 yards from the hole, from the pin, and it's like literally in the smack dab of the fairway. It was like the best tee shot, opening drive tee shot I've ever hit, and I had a few of them, like not quite that good, but I've been steadily improving. I mean, the bar was not high, but yeah, I've been better.
Improvement is good, right, Brandon? Improvement is good.
So now I'm obsessed. I'm chasing it. I'm chasing that feeling.
Yeah, the point is for you to get better, right?
Yeah,
you get better from there. And I'm glad you found your phone, by the way. I'm glad you found your phone.
I don't know what, I was losing my mind. I was like cooking dinner, and I was walking into my room, and I was like inputting what I was eating in MyFitnessPal, and then like I sat down at my computer for a second and closed Zoom because it was like right after work, and I still had it open. And then I walked back into the kitchen to finish dinner, and then I straight up could not find my phone anywhere. I was like, what the fuck did I do? Did I just did it disappear into thin air? Like, I looked in every possible spot. Like, I just had completely zoned out for like 2 minutes, and I had no idea where. But so I get on Twitter and I message Cam like, dude, I need you to call me, man. I can't find my phone. It fell under my bed. Anyway.
Yeah, it's the worst feeling in the world, though. Like, it is literally the worst feeling.
I was like, because I was gonna go to the gym, and I was like, I'm not going to the gym without. I need my music. I need my workout app. Like, I can't do this without. So I didn't go to the gym. That's tomorrow now, but
yeah,
that was horrific.
But yeah, it's definitely like one of those feelings where it's just like it truly sucks. Like a lot of people say, like, what is a brutal feeling, or what is like one of the worst brutal feelings? The fact of like losing your phone, I don't know where it ranks all time, but it is certainly up there. Like, you feel naked without it. Like, literally.
Like, I mean, did you see the remake of Jumanji with Jack Black?
Yeah.
Jack Black is like
where's my phone?
Stuck in Jack Black's Where's my phone? That was me.
Right. Yeah. Minus the voice. But yeah.
I was upset.
So anyway, the training camp is almost upon us, and that means obviously the Broncos season is inching closer and closer. So anybody that is watching this broadcast, feel free to chime in on what is your guys' camp battles, and who are some people that you guys feel that is on the roster bubble. Because obviously one of the famous conversations that is always had whenever we have roster bubble conversations, right, Brandon, is like, is there a notable player or two who might be on the roster bubble, right? And what would actually quantify a player being on the roster bubble, right? So feel free to chime in and let us know, what are some camp battles for you guys, and who would be on the roster bubble.
Let me look before we dive into this, because I know this is going to be a thing. Hold on. I forgot to put my blue light glasses on, and trying to get that on with my hat and my headphones on is like a whole. Now I'm really an old man.
It makes you look smarter too.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously we've seen released video and photos now of Ross recently, especially when he was at CU. I'm not going to get into the CU practice, because I have literally no opinion of this. I couldn't care less about him throwing against nothing in an empty stadium to no one in shorts and a tank top. But I can't help noticing how smaller he is, like how much smaller he is. And I feel like we've talked about this. Like this has been a discussion, but I feel like how much of this is I feel like this is gonna be one of those like background factors. And what I mean by that is how much did his weight last year play into how much he sucked? Like I'm legitimately curious. I'm not saying that like if he was skinnier, he just suddenly would have been, not trash. But I can't help wondering, like, did Nathaniel Hackett tell him, hey, I want you at this weight going into this season? Because Russ would be the kind of player that would do that. He'd be like, all right, coach, I'll get to that weight. And he shows up and he's thick with 3 C's. But, you're already that big. You put on the pads. You're a mobile quarterback. You move around a lot. That's like the whole basis of your game. You're going to be slow. You're trying to learn an offense. You're trying to gel. Like, I wonder how much that played into it, and that him being just noticeably thinner is going to make a big difference on his game. Like, I feel like even just him, not only just him being slower, like it might have made his whole process slower. Like he doesn't drop back as fast. He doesn't get through his reaches. Like, I mean, I know this isn't like just me excusing away him sucking, just saying like, oh, this is completely his fault because of his weight. Like that's just not the case. That's not possible. It's not how football works. But I'm just wondering how much of this maybe played into it. Like I'm just curious to know the percentage of
but like we've had
game that was related to that.
But we've had this conversation before, right? Like we've had this conversation before, just in terms of like
we did.
But in terms of like in terms of percentage, I don't know if I could put a percentage on it, but I would say that the fact that he was a bit overweight was concerning, and I would definitely say that it impacted his performance on the field, and in terms of even with what he could do on the field, mobility, everything that he was as a quarterback, mobility, running around, basically being an ad-lib quarterback, right? Because that was one of the things for Russell Wilson. Is like he is one of the greatest like ad-lib quarterbacks we'd seen in the modern era. And so I think that, it definitely did hamper him. In fact, I think it's definitely been a much longer period, Brandon. But it is fascinating to me, Brandon, how quickly he lost that weight. And the thing that made me, and it's a different sport analogy, but you know what it reminded me of? Remember when James Harden was going through that whole thing?
Literally had the exact same thought, man. I was like, you're going to say James Harden?
Yeah, but it was like, remember when Harden was going through that whole ordeal? I think was it with the Rockets, and then he gets traded to the Philadelphia 76ers. And it was like about a month or two. All of a sudden he looked like he was 280 pounds. And then he got to the Philadelphia 76ers and then he was 190 pounds. Like it was a stark contrast, and like that's exactly what I'm seeing with Russ. And I know it's a much longer period, right, of losing weight, but it is crazy the amount of weight that it's visible. Like you can actually tell he's lost a lot of weight, and that he's
that's why I'm bringing it up now is like we've talked about this, but I feel like when we talked about it, you didn't really see, like at that point you were saying, okay, Russ is losing some weight, but now you see him, especially in the CU training, and you look at him and like he's like, that's like dude's lost 15 pounds at least, like maybe more. I don't know. Like it just is starkly noticeable is why I'm bringing it up again.
And Josh does ask, and we did get confirmation that he was hurt. So to factor in with the fact that he was overweight, he was injured. I think he had, what was it, a rib injury?
I don't remember exactly what it was.
He obviously had the concussion. He had the rib injury, right? And I don't know if he had something with his arm or something, but the rib injury I think was the famous one that he had sustained. Like, or at least that came to light more near the end of the season. But yeah, he was definitely injured. Like he was definitely hurt. And yeah, so I think though, it's definitely one of those cases where maybe the reason why we didn't really think much on it to begin with, Brandon, and to use this as an example, is because of the whole before and after stuff, right? And I use that as an example. Like, it's pretty easy sometimes maybe to see maybe with what he was at Seattle, and then to see what he was in his first year as a Bronco, and he definitely seemed like he was a bit overweight. And so there, I think on evidence, like it was pretty clear, like he was, overweight. But then you see this now. The hamstring. That's right. It was a hamstring. It was hamstring hamstring and rib injury. But then you see these pictures. You see the pictures over there at CU, and it's just like, holy cow, this is stark. Like, it almost puts it truly confirms everything that we, believed, in the sense that he was overweight.
Right. And that's why I bring it up again, is like it's you look at it, you cannot notice it. But I know that's not really training camp related.
Yes and yes and no.
When I saw
but yes and no. I would just say yes and no. Like, it is sort of training camp related. But and I will say, like, obviously it's the thing with pro days. You never really take hardly anything from pro days, when they're running around and they're throwing deep passes and they're throwing, passes to air, right? So you really don't take much off of those. The only thing that is truly significant from that is the fact that Russ looks really good right now. Like, he looks like he's in really good shape. So that's the biggest takeaway of that.
Because I didn't even pay attention to what he was doing, because it doesn't matter. I was just paying attention to the only thing I noticed was just what he looked like, because it was just so different. Anyway.
So what camp battle do you want to start with first?
Okay. So I think there's one that's pretty obviously the biggest, I guess, hyped battle going into it. Maybe not hyped, but it's like, I would say is probably one of the most important, and that's going to be the center position.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's going to happen here. But center is actually, it's funny. This came up in when there was like all that running back discourse going around about like, oh, running backs aren't paid enough. And then, which actually I have some opinions on that we'll get into, but that whole running back discourse that was going around on Twitter. And then I don't remember who it was, but someone like brought up how little centers are paid compared to like kickers. Which, like, the running back and kicker comparison was stupid, because like you're comparing the salaries of 32 people to the average salary of 125 people. But the center position kind of caught my eye because of literally the amount of snaps that starting center play. They're playing every snap. They're the ones snapping the ball. Like, they literally are every single snap until they get injured. You don't really see, like, you'll see some maybe rotation at other positions along the line occasionally. I mean, especially if you're a Denver fan, you've seen like the rotating right tackle turnstile that isn't even always due to injury. It's just due to we haven't had a good right tackle. But center, and like, unless the player is completely horrific or he's injured, your starting center is going to be your starting center for literally every snap of the season until it gets hurt. So I feel like it's kind of not underrated, but it's more important than people seem to mention for some reason.
Yeah.
Like, you talk about the right tackle, you talk about the left tackle with good reason. I'm not saying those aren't very important positions. I understand why people talk about those, but I've seen more discussion over the guards than you've seen recently. Like, guards have kind of become more of a, I'm not going to say premier position, but they used to kind of just be like, whatever, no one cares. And then now they just seem to be more popular. And center, I mean, I think it's still going along that same trajectory of getting more attention, but I just don't think it's there yet. And I think if you have a bad center, that kind of screws up a lot of different things. And I have nothing against Lloyd Cushenberry. Again, I loved him coming out of LSU.
Wow.
But I don't know what's going to happen.
So this is quick. The Jets are trading Denzel Mims to the Detroit Lions.
Interesting.
Conditional 6th rounder. to the it's a conditional 6th rounder for the Jets, 7th rounder in 2025. But one of the things that was even mentioned, and I don't know if you had the chance to see this. It's and this is piggybacking off of your center conversation, because I will say the offensive line, we talked about it. If there is one position, if you were to wave that red flag, I know friend of the show Joey Richards and the entire LTB crew, right? Fans of the MHRT network and mainly he posed a question about like, what are your biggest red flags, right? And like the center position is one of them. And I don't know if you had the chance to read the Mike Kliss article. I don't know if you had the chance to read that. In there, he did mention that, and granted, I'm sure it was like OTAs and stuff like that, and probably the rookie camp right before training camp. But he did say that Alex Forsyth is garnering a lot of positive vibes within the organization, that he's really starting out well. So he's getting a lot of praises early on right now, which I mean, we talked about it, but I mean, if you are a 7th round draft pick, the moment that you want to start making a name for yourself, the moment that you want to start making a name and potentially pushing Lloyd Cushenberry, who we know is going to be on the hot seat anyway, that's a big deal. If you can be able to hit the ground running and start with a positive vibe, that's a big deal. And also, what does that tell you for Luke Wattenberg, right? Like, what does that tell us about Luke Wattenberg, or even guys like a Kyle Fuller, who they just recently signed? So the fact that you are generating, the buzz right now for Forsyth is good. Like, it is really good. And maybe this is something, that can linger into training camp, and then he can continue some of these praises for the fans that are going to be in attendance for training camp, and more importantly, the preseason games.
I mean, I hope so. As we kind of talked about with Lloyd, the center position, especially for rookies, it takes some time to get into it. And Alex is obviously a rookie, and Lloyd is getting into year 4, and he's still not really where you'd expect him to be. And that even could, be, again, nothing against Lloyd Cushenberry, but that could be almost a bit of a strike against him, that he's, entering year 4 and he's still not developed to where you would expect him to have been, like, as a starting center in the league by that time in his career. So I don't know. I want to know what happens there, because I feel like that's like the last remaining massive question mark on the offensive line.
Aside from I'd say some like tackle depth still, like,
but I mean, just on the starter, just in the starting lineup. I mean, depth on the offensive line is pretty much always going to be a question mark for like 90% of teams. But just the starters, if you're looking at the starters as a whole, center is definitely like the what's going on here position, which you don't want that. You really don't want that. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but I'm fascinated to see. I mean, does Alex Forsyth give him legitimate competition? I mean, another thing to think about here is Alex Forsyth is 24 as a rookie. Lloyd Cushenberry is 25, is in year 4.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know.
And I think the other thing is like, and we obviously talked about the idea that he's still a 7th round draft pick, and it's really hard to predict or even bank on a player like that becoming a type of starter or a really,
Matt Paradis,
a dominant starter, right? Matt Paradis being an example. But I think that the important thing with Sean Payton being in the building, and this is something we've talked just in terms of in a vacuum, in the sense of like Sean Payton being, one of the best things that the Broncos could have done, which was hire Sean Payton, right? In terms of moves, in terms of the future as well, even quarterback position, whatever, just overall franchise, right? I think that when you also are a new coach and you're entering into that building, you want to build your team with your guys. And he obviously drafted Alex Forsyth, right? He and George Payton. It's definitely on his resume. And if the vibe right now is that Forsyth is getting this type of praise and this type of positivity right now before training camp, this could be a sign that Forsyth is his guy, right? Like, is his guy. And if that's his guy, if you will, for center, he may not be starting right now, obviously, say week 1, but there is a decent chance, and I mean it based on this narrative, but it's just like it means that like he could be replacing Cushionberry sooner rather than later, even during the season. Because, like, if he feels pretty comfortable in him already. What's up, Ray?
I mean, I don't know. I hope so. I don't. Again, nothing against Cushionberry. If things continue on this trajectory, I'm pretty much expecting that this is going to sound bad. This is a bit much, but I was going to say I'm pretty much expecting that Alex Forsyth is going to be taking over at some point. And the only reason I say that is like if Alex Forsyth continues to show out as like being an impressive rookie and Lloyd Cushionberry continues to be, who knows what this guy is. I mean, those lines are going to intersect at some point and you're going to have to make a switch. So, if anything, what I would love to see happen, I wanted both these guys to look good. I want us to go into this, and I want Lloyd Cushionberry to be dominating, and I want Alex Forsyth to still be like giving him hell and making it harder for him. But I still want Lloyd Cushionberry to be dominating, because then we have an experienced guy going into his 4th year that is finally showing the development that he should be at this point. That is not going to be a massive liability on the offensive line, and you have a promising rookie that you can potentially develop because that's the other thing with Lloyd Cushionberry is like you're gonna have to pay him soon. If he doesn't completely like show out, you're not gonna pay him. Like, I don't even know, unless Lloyd Cushionberry goes out there and is like an absolute monster, I don't think we're extending. Like, I don't think we can give him a contract.
Right.
Maybe as like a very low rate backup.
Yeah.
But we're going to have some kind of answer here, whether that's like we have a rookie that we feel comfortable in, or we're still going to have to sign someone else. But center to me is like, I want to know what's going to happen there. That's like what I'm wanting to pay attention to.
What do you guys feel? What do you guys feel? Ty, if you're still here, let us know what you feel. The Camp Battle Sports Nonsense, let us know what you feel. Josh, if you're still here, let us know what maybe a Camp Battle. Ray, I know you just got here, but we're talking about some camp battles. What are some camp battles that you guys feel, for this team? And, is there a possible notable player, should we say, that could be on the chopping block? For the Broncos that could be cut as far as a surprise, and kind of continuing a little bit of the theme. I think also too, Brandon, like camp battle also, I don't think doesn't necessarily mean it's a player versus this player and that player is on the chopping block, right? It's just about like, what is the battle? Like, for instance, like, and I'm not saying this is the Broncos case for running back, right? Like with Javonte and Samaje Perine, in the sense of like, you have a wide or a running back 1 and, a running back 2 or per se, but like, if they have a camp battle, Perine's going to come out as running back 1, Javonte is going to be running back 2, that kind of thing. And, Javonte is still going to stay on the roster, right? So like you may have a camp battle there. So my thinking is, in terms of a camp battle, is how is and this is something we did talk a little bit about a little bit still, but it's like the disparity between the carries that you see in training camp between Perine and Javonte. Like, what is it going to look like? And then also this is just even furthering that for that camp battle, but truly, like, what is the running back depth going to look like? And is Tony Jones Jr. going to be showing enough to where he can be a running back 3 behind some of these other guys? Or is, Tyler Beatty kind of a sneaky player who really came on late last season? Is he going to be that kind of player that fits really well with the New Orleans Saints and with the the Denver Broncos had champagne on the mind, right? We're still getting used to it. But the Denver Broncos and his fit for this team, or even a Jaleel McLaughlin, right? A Jaleel McLaughlin, a guy who has been super productive at the college level, maybe the most productive college back that we had seen in quite some time. Where will he fit? Is he going to be the change of pace? Is he going to be the change of pace back? Right. So I think that a camp battle for me, maybe not necessarily is running backs 1 and 2, but it's more so what is the workload between the two going to be in terms of a camp battle. But also, what is the depth going to look like between running back 3 and running back 4?
Well, one thing I'm interested to see at the running back position is specifically, and this isn't really like a Broncos camp thing, but I want to know who the camp cuts are across the league, because I would not be surprised if we bring one of those guys in.
Yeah.
Like I still feel like there's something that's going to happen at running back. And I mean, could the thing that happens at running back be that, Jaleel McLaughlin or Tony Jones Jr. or Tyler Beatty shows out and is like solidifies himself as I am your running back 3? Yes. Could it also be that those guys are kind of like middling and there's some roster cuts around the league, camp cuts around the league at the running back position that we could bring in? Also, yes. So I'm interested to see what that turns into.
Yeah. And
also, can we talk about the fact that we have 2 backup quarterbacks named Jarrett? I want to know who's the best Jarrett.
What is it? It's Jarrett Stidham and
Jarrett
Guarantano. It's gonna be the battle of Jarrett's.
Yeah.
I guarantee you a Jarrett will win.
They're both gonna get cut.
Yeah, that would be a surprise. So Ray, speaking of QB battle, he actually says the QB2 battle, the QB.
Well, don't forget about Ben DiNucci. Anyway.
Yeah, so he says QB2 battle, CB, the cornerback 2 battle, inside linebacker battle, if there is one. And I think that's probably where the Drew Sanders conversation comes in, right? But like the strong safety battle between Jackson and Stearns. And I wanted to bring this up too with the wide receivers, but the wide receiver depth, obviously from like that 4th to the 6th spot, right? Or at least you have an idea of like what's 1 through 4. The question is just what is the 5 and 6 going to consist of?
Well, let me ask you this question. Can Jackson beat out Stearns? And the reason I ask this is I don't know if one of them is planning on, I don't know if the Broncos organization is thinking one of these guys is going to win and be our, number 2 safety next to Justin Simmons. We might be going into this they're both. We're 1A, 1B, 1C. We're going to roll with all 3 of them and use them in different ways.
We talked about that
I know we talked about it. Yeah. But I don't know if I love that. I agree with a lot of what Ray just talked about. But when he said that, Jackson beats out Stearns, he'd be disappointed. I don't know if anyone's beating out anyone there. I think you're going to see all of them get a lot of work.
Yeah, but I will say though, Stearns, from everything that we heard, and I think Mario has actually publicly said this, but he's been hearing that Stearns is actually probably going to be the guy alongside Justin Simmons. And I think based on where we are in the career with Kareem, that's probably our ideal scenario, and that should have happened last year, right? But to your point, though, Brandon, I think this is the underrated aspect, and why I felt like the safety room is the deepest, or one of the deepest in for this team, is because the PJ Locks of the world don't get mentioned in this conversation. But the fact that he played so well last year, he needs to be mentioned in that conversation, because Locke played exceptionally well when Stearns went out, and even before his injury. Then you have Stearns and the potential that he's had, and at least shown on the football field before injury. So you have Stearns, Kareem Jackson, despite the fact that he does have that age, right? he still can show those signs and bring the lumber and be the, that viable guy to really be like the enforcer, right, if you will. And not saying that like a guy like a Caden Stearns or a PJ Locke can't be like that, or whatever, but it helps when you have that kind of presence in the room.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really disagree. It'll be interesting. I definitely think Caden Stearns is in for. We're going to get a lot of Caden Stearns.
Agree. Yeah, I definitely agree. But let's. Josh mentioned the guards. We did.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Josh and Ray both mentioned guards, and that is something that we didn't get a chance to mention in terms of the offensive line depth. But I think that's also a case, right, where you're looking at that depth again for the offensive line, because really you have Ben Powers, and you have Quinn Miners, but I mean Cam Fleming has played guard, but the guard depth is a bit suspect, right? I mean, like you really don't have that much there. It's pretty bare in terms of for guard depth.
I will say at the guard position specifically, I feel more confident going into that, at that position going into this season now than I did last year. And a lot of that comes down to Ben Powers. Like, Ben Powers is one of the best guards in the NFL. Like, he was a very great and somewhat underrated signing for us in this offseason. So I feel a lot better about it there. Nothing again against like any of these guys, but last year, I mean, yeah, it's still Quinn Miners, who was still pretty impressive, but Quinn Miners, in another year in the league, obviously now, unfortunately, does still have like yet another coach, right? That's not fantastic, although from what we know, it's a complete massive upgrade in every possible way. But Quinn Miners coming in, having another year in the system, I think he's going to be, or at least in the NFL, I think he's going to take at least somewhat of a step. Maybe it's like not huge, but I don't feel too bad about him. And I love Dalton Reisner.
Yeah.
I still feel like Dalton Reisner wasn't super great, to be honest, for us last year. And nothing against him. Love him as a person, as a guard on the field. I think he was a little bit of a negative, to be honest. I mean, he's still a free agent. There's a reason for that. Like, nothing. I feel bad for saying this because I love Dalton Reisner. Well, I feel like we've definitely upgraded.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention his name. But Quinn Bailey is the depth at guard, and Quinn Bailey provided that serviceableness right when he was in. But again, you have Ben Powers, Quinn Miners, and then basically Quinn Bailey. Our lads, the site right now basically has the depth looking at like Quinn Bailey, Henry Bird, Alex Forsythe. This is including center. Luke Wattenberg backing up Cushenberry right now. Kyle Fuller actually as a right guard behind Quinn Miners. And then Will Sherman, no relation to Josh Sherman.
As far as we know,
unless there's something Josh isn't telling us.
Brandon Miller, or no relation to Vaughn Miller.
Or Brandon Miller, actually being
Miller.
Being actually no relation to Brandon Miller. And then Alec, and so Will Sherman, Alex Forsythe, Henry Bird. Like, so I mean, like, I think the thing that is that gray area is you really do have the versatility with some of those centers, right? Like a guy like a Kyle Fuller, maybe a Luke Wattenberg, but granted, Luke Wattenberg was able to play, but like in this time that he was able to play on the field, whether it was center or it was guard, it was a Control-Alt-Delete scenario. I want to erase that from my brain because he looked lost. He looked like a completely different player. Like, and I mean, granted, he's got a new coach and he's got a new offensive line coach. He's got a new, scheme. Maybe that was just a deer in the headlight situation for a rookie. I don't know, but for a good first impression, it was not a good first impression for being thrown into the fire like that. But
I'm actually like I'm pretty excited about the guard position, to be honest. Like moving forward, because we've already talked about Ben Powers and how good he is. I feel like there's probably very few Broncos fans that don't love Quinn Miners. And I think, going into year 3, if you don't see some development there, like he's going to be in trouble. But I think you're going to see some development. Like he had all the tools. He was trending in the right direction. He's an absolute animal in run blocking, which so is Ben Powers. And Ben Powers is 26 years old. Like we could have a tandem at guard for the next 5 years.
Yeah, and the only thing that I've actually
the only thing on back there is said if Alex Forsyth comes in, he wins that starting center spot and he proves to be the guy. That interior offensive line, that's going to be a strength of this team for a while.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable saying this. It all hinges on center right now, unfortunately. But
it's definitely a good take because, and I think that's one of the reasons why you hope Quinn Miners can take that leap, because you have already made that investment in Ben Powers, and then now it's just about what is that center position going to consist of? What is the next step that we'll be seeing from Miners? What is that going to be? Taking place. But I think you hit a pretty decent, because the thing I think of, and it's different in a certain way, but if you think about the way the Dallas Cowboys built their offensive line, it was they truly kind of felt like they built it from the inside out, right? And so they almost fortified the offensive line, and then that's when they worked on all that other stuff. But the thing is, for the Broncos, there's probably some leeway where they could do some of that, where they could work from that inside, because some of those playmakers, or a fair amount of the playmakers, are already set in stone, or we think are set in stone, right? So I think that when you have a guy like an Alex Forsyth and potentially the development of a Quinn Miners, that would bode well for you, to what you were saying, because you will have an offensive line at the very least for about 5 or 6 years, if not more. And you're
going to have an offensive line that's going to be very good at running the ball. Hint, 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 hint.
Yeah, and
18 times.
But I was just going to say is that the Broncos have not had an offensive line in terms of sure consistency in years for quite some time. And that's the other part of that is if you have Forsyth and maybe even McGlinchey too at right tackle, and if they can be able to lock Garrett Bowles up and he can play better, you're going to be having an offensive line that is, or at least could stay intact for a decent chunk of their future and foreseeable future.
Since Matt Paradis left in basically 2018, it kind of feels like we haven't ever really had any one part of the offensive line in general that was yes, this is good. Because right tackle, that's always been a problem. Right tackle has just been the turnstile of issues. Garrett Bowles, for the vast majority of the beginning of his career, was bad. You had Matt Paradis, who was, your Iron Man. And then, Billy Turner kind of came in and out. He was pretty good. Connor McGovern was pretty good. But again, Matt Paradis was pretty much your best offensive lineman. You go back, that was his last year. You go back a year before that, you had Menelik Watson. Oh my God. Ronald Leary, who was solid, except when he played. Matt Paradis again. Max Garcia, who
surprisingly got better a little bit.
And then again, you got Garrett Bowles. That was Garrett Bowles' rookie season.
Yeah.
So going back, center, we had one good player on the offensive line that was yes, this is a great starter, and that was ironically at center. Then you go after the year that he after he left, we moved Connor McGovern there. He was okay. Rod O'Leary was still at right guard. He was, 30. He was still injured a decent amount. Elijah Wilkinson was your right tackle, who was, Elijah Wilkinson. Dalton Reisner's rookie year. And then you had Garrett Bowles, who was starting to get a little bit better. You go 1 year past that. Like, you see what I'm saying here? You go the next year, Lloyd Cushenberry comes in. He's your rookie. Graham Glasgow, pretty good right guard, but not fantastic. DeMar Dotson was your right tackle. Who the hell knows? Dalton Reisner was still your left guard. Garrett Bowles is getting a bit better. So, like, we haven't really had a good offensive lineman, like, even looking individually since Matt Paradis. You look at it this year, I'm not saying that we're going to have a fantastic offensive line. And obviously there's the stuff that goes into it with
it's probably top
Russ creating his own sacks. But just looking at the talent level of this right now, like, I feel like this could be one of our better offensive lines in recent memory, because if Quinn Miners makes that leap, center is a huge question mark, unfortunately. Ben Powers is a good guard. Quinn Miners, even if he doesn't make that leap, is already pretty good. You got Mike McGlinchey, who, even if he, that's another kind of like you'll see, but even if he, disappoints a little bit relative to how much we paid him, he's still an upgrade. And then Garrett Bowles, if he comes back to pre-injury self, like, he was one of the best left tackles in the league, could also be one of the best offensive lines that we fielded in the past 5 years.
For sure. And
it's interesting to think
about. Like top 12, possibly, like
in the league. Yeah, probably. Does Russell Wilson use a top 12 offensive line? Like, that's the question to me, because he holds onto the ball too much. He runs around too much. He creates his own sacks. Yeah. If he fixes that, we're going to have a good offensive line.
Yeah, Ray says, first time in a long time, I'm feeling not great, but I am, but somewhat secure with the tackles and tackle depth.
The depth is always going to be, the depth on the offensive line for pretty much every team is always going to be hard, honestly. But even there, you look at, you're behind. Again, center is the big, who the hell knows, right? But other than that, guard is also, like, there's not a ton of fantastic depth there, but you still have Quinn Bailey, who knows. But Cam Fleming, I think bringing back Cam Fleming was big. Like, I feel pretty good about our backup on the right tackle side. Can he play left tackle well too? Not sure, honestly, but I feel better about our tackle depth. Interior offensive line, maybe not as much, but I don't know. I'm liking the offensive line.
Yeah, we have optimistic Clayton in the house. Yes, by the way, smash that like button and share. He says top 5 offense and top 5 defense. If they are top 5, if they have top 5 in that category, Clayton, they're winning the Super Bowl, or at least, like, they're on the doorstep of going back to the AFC Championship game. But I love your optimism, because if they could be able to do that, that is something that they've not been able to achieve since 2015. But yeah, I love the optimism, buddy. Let's talk a little bit. I want to talk about the wide receivers, though, just for a second, because
talk about the corners. Go ahead.
We're already on the offense, so I just figured we might as well just continue the theme.
Fine. Because if we're going wide receiver, I already have my bubble talk.
Well, I feel like the bubble talk is also something we've mentioned before, right? Notable would probably be some of those players within the wide receiver room, guys like KJ Hamler, and I don't know if it would be notable, but like Montrell Washington. And I say notable just from the standpoint of he was just drafted this last year. So those two guys, if you're looking at, potentially maybe being on the roster bubble, and we've touched on it.
I think it's good.
Yeah. And who knows? And maybe it is because of the fact that they drafted Marvin Mims, who is no relation to Denzel Mims, who is now with the Detroit Lions. But like we said earlier, the top 4 is set, right? Top 4 is set. So you have Jerry, Cortland, Tim, Marquez Callaway. Actually, top 5 is set. It's just what is going to be 4 and 5. Is it going to be so you have Jerry, Cortland, Tim, Callaway, Mims, or is it Mims and Callaway?
I think it's Callaway Mims. Easy.
It may start. Yeah, it may start out Callaway and then Mims, and it may get to Mims and then Callaway, or Mims then Callaway. Then it's just after that. Like, is it going to be Washington? Is it going to be like, I don't know. It's just I agree, Ray. It's everybody not named Sutton, Judy, Patrick, or Mims on the bubble, and Callaway. So it's basically your top 5.
I don't think Callaway's on the bubble. No.
Yeah,
but
yeah, KJ's on the bubble. Montreal's on the bubble.
I don't think KJ's on this team.
You don't think so?
I can't see a scenario where KJ is still on this team.
Here, I could see a scenario
I'm
where
smiling while I'm saying that. I'm smiling. It's like the fake forced smile, like forced laughter,
like forced.
Like
yeah,
I'm faking it.
Right, almost like that scene in Shrek where they're holding up the sign, and he writes forced laughter on there.
It's like the face that has the mask on with the smiling face, and then behind it, it's like rage and tears.
Right, right. I could see a scenario though where KJ, he may not be on the Broncos the entire season, but he could be on the Broncos through the midway point of the season, and then maybe be trade bait in the middle part of the season. But the thing is, like, it would also
we'll see. Like, the only reason, Clayton, I say this is I just feel like we haven't really seen him make that jump, and then you had the injury.
Yeah.
And it's hard to make the jump when you're coming off of the injury. Like, I don't know. I love KJ. Like, I love KJ, but I'm just looking at this in year 4.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Another injury. Like, the thing is like, for Clayton, it's like we're not trying to knock even the potential for KJ, because his potential is about through the roof. It's just, can he stay on the field and play for those 18 weeks? If he can do that and provide that kind of firepower, you're talking about that firepower to a room with a Marvin Mims and a Callaway and a Jerry Jeudy and a healthy Tim Patrick and a healthy Cortland, right? He adds that speed element with Mims that just helps take the top off the defense even more. And so we just really need to see a healthy. You really do need to stay on the field if you're KJ.
KJ was injured and couldn't run the 40 at his pro day. Like, it sucks. Like, it sucks because I like KJ, but
he's a good locker room.
We also just went and drafted Marvin Mims. And we're in a 4.38. Like, Marvin Mims is a speedy dude. Clearly, if we want to have that juice, we went and got guys that have more juice. Like, not more as in more juice than KJ, but like, I don't know. I feel like there's a reason we drafted Marvin Mims. Speed isn't everything, as the other Mims in New York just learned. Like, when Denzel Mims ran his, like, what was it, 4.27 or something? There was like all that insane hype of, like, and people overhyped the 40 time, but there was all that stuff of like people making him like that meme of like Denzel Mims after he runs the 40 and the guy like talking on the phone with a wad of cash, that whole thing. And people were hyping him up because he was so fast. But then you look at it a couple years later, a dude was just traded for a late pick swap because, I mean, could it be that the Jets just couldn't figure out how to use him? They couldn't figure out how to work him into their offense? Sure. Don't know. But I don't know. Speed is just like people try to go after that, blazing fast time, and it just doesn't always translate. That's not always the most important thing. I mean, I'm looking at, I'm watching some routes that Marvin Mims ran, and like some people on the draft day had his comp as Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel like there's a reason we drafted him. I love KJ Hamler, but I just don't. He's going to have to show out. If he shows out, I'm going to be a happy guy. Like, I'm going to love it. I'm going to be so happy for him. I'm looking at it right now, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happens.
All right, now time to appease the elephant in the room. The elephant being Brandon with the cornerback position.
Yes, corner.
But actually, let's tie a bow on this real quick.
No, we're talking about corner.
But I was just gonna say, if you were to make a prediction of like who would you keep on the practice squad for the Broncos at wide receiver, is it Brandon Johnson or is it Jalen Virgil?
I don't know. I guess it depends on.
I almost want to say Virgil right now.
Who gives you the most versatility?
Like I almost wanted to say Virgil right now.
Like, let's say you're holding, obviously, like let's say the power retorter job is still, like we just don't really know what's going on there. Let's say they hold some tryouts for that, and XYZ guy wins it, but then you also see, okay, Brandon Johnson was number 2. He was solid.
Right.
That could be enough to sway who we keep on the depth.
Yeah. I say Jalen Virgil right now, just because he's got the size. He's definitely got the speed. And there's some talent there with him, but man, I'm curious about him. You get him with a guy like a Sean Payton. I would be curious with what he could do, and if you could be able to stash him on your practice squad with no one poaching him, and bringing him on their team. If you could be able to do that, that would be ideal. Obviously, the loss of Brandon Johnson was hard. He did get injured at the end of preseason, and they were able to bring him back. I think they waived him, and then they brought him back. But I would, if I had to make a guess between the two of them, I would say Jalen Virgil, just because of the higher ceiling.
Looking at it right now, if I also had to make a decision, I would probably say Jalen Virgil, mostly because we've seen Russ have somewhat of a chemistry with him against the Titans.
And at least in camp, he had some chemistry with Brandon Johnson too.
Yeah. But I mean, in meaningful,
right,
NFL
in meaningful games,
snaps.
you saw Virgil. All right, now time to appease the elephant in the room, and that being Brandon and him wanting to talk about
the elephant. You making fun of my weight? I ain't no elephant,
man. We have Fiona in the house. And then
hey.
No, we're getting a bit defensive now. Let's talk about the defensive back.
How much can you bench?
So why do you want to talk about
jelly beans? So the main reason I want to talk about corner is I don't know what's going to happen at the number 2 spot.
Yeah. And
it worries me a little bit, to be honest. Like, obviously Pat Surtain is like, we don't even have to talk about Pat. But beyond that, I mean, K'Wan Williams is 32. Like, he's your slot guy. He kind of has to be. Other than that, who's your cornerback 2? Like, I think it have to be Damari Mathis by default. But like, I like that. But we talked about this last episode with Brandon. He probably should play more inside. Like, is he an outside corner? I don't know. I mean, he's 5'11". That's not tiny, but you kind of want your outside guys to be a bit lankier, a bit longer. But you can't really put him inside because you already have a guy inside and you need a number 2 on the outside. So I don't know. I like Damari Mathis. Like, I'm not, again, nothing against Damari Mathis. I think he's good. I'm excited to see what he does. I don't like the idea of going into camp and penciling him in as this is your starting number 2 cornerback with having because I don't even know if there's going to be any competition there at all. I mean, I think they're going to probably make some. Like Jaquan McMillan had some nice game reps there. He also might be also more of like a slot guy, maybe. Riley Moss is interesting, and I could see him pushing for it. He's super athletic. He's a rookie. Like, I don't know. I just don't. I'm not in love with Essang Bassey. He's been around. Nothing really has happened. Faion Hicks.
Yeah.
He's kind of just a guy at this point, to be honest. Yeah. Like Art Green.
Project
Hood.
Tremon
Smith. Who knows? I don't know. Devon Key. He's not even listed as a corner. He's a DB. Like, I don't know what the hell they're going to use him
for.
And
actually, Tremon Smith, let's be honest, like Tremon Smith might not even be a defensive back that they use on this.
These guys might not even stay on the team. Like, how many of these guys
are the team? No, but I'm saying Tremon Smith would just be solely your specialist, your kickoff and punt return specialist.
I don't know. I want to know what happens there. I want to see what goes on there because the depth there is somewhat worrying, and I like Damari Mathis, but like I don't like just thrusting him in there, and it's like, well, he's your starting number 2 cornerback, and figure it out.
I think it's Mathis right now.
If it doesn't go, it doesn't go.
I think it's Mathis right now, but we do need to at least.
It has to be.
Right, but I think it's Mathis. I think we also need to at least hold out the possibility that there's a sophomore slump into that. So I do think that we should at least be bracing potentially for a sophomore slump, and if there is,
that's why I don't like it though. That's why I don't like it.
And so, like, if there is one, you need to be able to have trustable options. And is that going to be a guy like Riley Moss? Well, I don't know, and we don't know that answer. I think
I don't think you can know, honestly.
Well, obviously we can't because training camp hasn't even started, and fans aren't.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know, but like, and we won't actually. But like, we won't even tell that answer based on even how they want to make the roster until preseason games are happening. And so, but I will say if there is 2 names to keep in mind in terms of potentially a cornerback number 2, one of them is a hot take. The other one, not so much. But I would say Riley Moss and Jaquan McMillan are the 2 guys that I would be looking at potentially as, some of those corners. If they were to take that cornerback 2 spot from Mathis, it would be Riley Moss or even a Jaquan McMillan. McMillan, I feel like is your project. Like if you want to work with the guy and potentially have him be an outside corner, which he clearly showed and played pretty well in that Chargers game for that one game that he played really well and almost, and I should say almost, he actually should have had that interception in the Chargers game. Still pretty mad about that. But he played really well. For if you were to ask an athlete to play really well for a first time in a game, he played really well. And I don't know what Bassey's going to do. Obviously, Bassey, with a few coaching staffs, has played well to at least hang on to go to a few teams and then come back to the Broncos. But there's no guarantee that he'll be sticking with the Broncos because they could easily cut him tomorrow.
I think Bassey is like,
yeah, and so I think that
he's kind of just a guy at this point. He's just hanging around.
And as we mentioned before, there's also the versatility of the safety room, to where you could be able to use some of those people within the nickel position, guys like PJ Locke, maybe Kareem Jackson in certain situations, and a J.L. Skinner. And J.L. Skinner, because that was some positive news that we got with the safety room, was that J.L. Skinner is possible to be escaping the PUP list right now, which is very good news.
Yeah.
So
I'm interested to see what happens.
Yeah. Transitioning away from the training camp battles, let's talk about something that I know fans have been clamoring for quite some time. I don't know if Ray, Clayton, I'm sure Josh has been clamoring for this. Maybe even Sports Nonsense has been clamoring for this. I know we have, but the time may be nigh or near in terms of us getting new uniforms. I say new uniforms because if it's possible that the Broncos are teasing a helmet that appears to be the classic Denver D logo with white and that Denver D logo, it's possible that you can't necessarily put that helmet with the current construction that it already is, which is, the white uniform with the stripes on the side. The only way that you would ever really do something like that, right, Brandon, is if you were to do the white helmet and you would do basically the current logo and you would basically do like a orange outline of it. It's basically what Mario made on Twitter. You basically do the orange outline of that Broncos logo or a blue outline of that Broncos logo with a white helmet.
Is that just like what's going on? Is like all these teams are getting the whiteout version? Because I feel like that has to be what's going on here, just with like the nature of this hype video or graphic that the team put out.
It's almost like another schedule release.
Like
in terms of how they're hyping it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm really interested. Like, I can't even tell. Is it just helmets? Is it just like that's why I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going on in the league with this, because I don't know what's going on. I don't know if this is just like, this is an alternate helmet, or if it's like, this is our new, what we're wearing for Color Rush, or like, I don't know.
I think it's an alternate helmet, but I think that
but they're going to disappoint so many people if they do that, because it's like all this hype for, it's just an alternate helmet. That's it.
Well,
like
and that's
this whole opportunity to change things up.
And that's why I say if it's just an alternate helmet, it's probably going to be something that is that white helmet with the Broncos logo that's outlined in like orange or blue or whatever with that Broncos logo. Because if they do the classic Denver D logo of like the 90s and and basically everything that I'm sure a lot of fans love, right? And especially the Color Rush logo. Like if they do that in white, right? If they do that in white, you almost have to, and I actually shouldn't say almost, you have to have a white Color Rush uniform to go with that. And the only way that has to happen is obviously if you get clearance from the league. And in terms of like teams that like, I think that they've only just made an alternate helmet would be the Cleveland Browns and the Minnesota Vikings, I think. Because obviously the Cleveland Browns, they already had their white uniforms, so they just did an all-white helmet, which, by the way, looks clean. That Cleveland Browns helmet is probably the best thing that they've done in the last 40 years as a franchise.
Looks better than their logo.
Yeah. And then
I don't know. I mean, I feel like it has to be more.
Do we make?
What?
We think you may have been lagging, but what were you saying? Yeah,
I was saying like it has to be. It literally has to be more than just a helmet. It can't possibly only be an alternate helmet.
Yeah, it has to be the jersey. And by the way, as much as it pains me that I hate the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, that's so good. It's so good.
Their throwback uniform is so good. It's S tier. Like it is like elite of the elite. Like I think back to some of like the helmets that I used to enjoy and kind of like grew up on. Like the Eagles helmet was almost identical, if you will, to somewhat of what the Eagles had for a certain point. But like then they got like the eagle, like the actual eagle, put on the helmet, and it was like lime green, and then they put it on the sleeves and stuff like that. So like you got that throwback, but the Seattle Seahawks is just a classic one. I mean, that's like it's something that's basically the thing that's also it's setting up for this Denver Broncos stuff is like it's also setting up because there's so many teams that are announcing. I think the Tennessee Titans are announcing an alternate uniform possibly this weekend. It's setting up that the Broncos are going to be the very last team to release potentially their new helmet and maybe new jersey. If it's just a helmet after all this
What if
hoopla
it's
and it's just the helmet and being the last team, it's gonna suck.
what if it's just
It'll be
like a
underwhelming.
straight up what if it's just a straight up throwback directly to like the 94 whites? It's just the exact same as the 94 whites.
That's fine.
That would be pretty sick.
That's fine. But with the white helmet, because
But with the white helmet.
yeah, that would be really sick. And because if I remember right, it was the blue helmet, right? It was
It
the
was the
blue
blue
helmet.
helmet. It was the lighter blue helmet with the
It was
D and then the
right.
white, orange, and white stripe.
Yeah, so doing it white with that would be nearly close to chef's kiss, if you will. So if they can do that,
I'm interested to see this.
But also if they could be able to do it, I will say if they could be also doing it in a way that's like the Color Rush style. So the way they did
I think my favorite one, I don't know if I've seen Mario's. It might be very similar. My favorite one is one that Tim Contic put out with, I don't know if it's, can I put like a picture in the main chat? Nope.
I think I know which one you're talking about though. You talking about like the white helmet with the
I can't find it.
With like the orange jersey.
Can I put it in private chat? Oh, this is stupid. It's the one of Justin Simmons where it's like the straight white helmet and it's like kind of like a darker orange and darker blue stripe. The old throwback D, and then it's like not really. It's a different shade of orange. It's kind of more of like a metallic orange on pretty much the entire jersey, and then like a bit of a darker blue. But I think it's sick.
Watch the Broncos just troll all of us, and it's a completely different color than white.
What the hell could it be? Like with the way that they put out that like
no, I know.
What the hell else could it be?
No, I know, but it just would be like the biggest troll job ever. Like, here it is. It's what looks to be a white helmet, because if you go back and look at the background, it actually looks like it's a white helmet just a little bit. And
here, do fans of other teams, other sports clamor? Because like I literally don't think I see this. Like obviously I'm still a fan of the NBA, the NHL, but by far the Broncos are like my main one. Do other sports teams fans hype themselves up and clamor for new uniforms more than the NFL? Because I feel like it's constantly a thing.
Since we're on this conversation, I don't know. Since we're on this conversation, the NBA and the and the MLB are now starting to do these things. Obviously, the NBA started it with the city jerseys, the statement jerseys, that kind of thing. And obviously and then baseball's now doing the City Connect jerseys, right? Do you think with the NFL being such a big entity and maybe the biggest sports entity about looking into the possibility of doing, if you will, an every other year or every year thing where they do a City Connect or a statement jersey or a city uniform, which is something that is...
what if they found a way to do like the Broncos version of the Nuggets, like black skyline city jerseys? Because that would be the coolest fucking thing. I would buy that immediately.
You're talking basketball.
No, yeah, but for the Broncos, like what if they found a way to do something similar to that with the Broncos uniforms?
It'd be interesting because
city.
It'd be interesting because if you look at it from the uniform perspective, I'd be curious if there's a way that they could incorporate, if it is like a statement jersey, City Connect jersey. Like, I'd almost be curious if they could find a way to put like outlined mountains on the sleeve, or
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Like, but so you're
like the mountains of the skyline,
but like actually mountains, if you will, like versus just a skyline, which is the Denver Nuggets skyline.
I think pull this up. Didn't it also have the? Yeah, it was like this. Oh, you're talking about just the mountains by themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be sweet.
So yeah, I'd be kind of curious to see what they would do with that. And maybe that's something, obviously, once the NFL gets more popular and with this idea of clamoring for more jerseys and everything, maybe that actually happens. What do you guys think? Ray, Josh, Clayton? I know that Clayton chimes in and he says that he loves the white and then the throwback blue. Josh, even it's funny because, like, based on the what happened when the Broncos did do the uniform change, like the moment they did the uniform change to those stripes and the jerseys that they have now, they won the Super Bowl. And they didn't just win one Super Bowl, they won back-to-back Super Bowls. So so I mean, I feel like that's tongue in cheek, but obviously if they did change the uniforms, that would be a talking piece is, well, I guess the Broncos are winning the Super Bowl this year. Ray chimes in, and he says that he's warming up a little bit to the white helmet. So I guess to Ray's point, why were you against it? Like, why were you against it? Like, why? Because I think, like,
personally,
were you against it?
I don't know, but personally, if I'm envisioning, well, I'm not the way that I'm envisioning this going. Because if you told me we're just going to take our normal white uniforms and just make the helmet white, I would be against that. I would be against. But I don't think you can do that here. Like, you have to change it up a little bit.
You almost have to change.
That's why I like the like pure snow white. I know it's weird. It like sounds weird for me to say this because white is white, right? But it's almost like the lighter white. And if I could share my screen of this like Tim Contic edit, I would, because it's so good. But it's like it's almost a lighter. It's like a more pure white. I do have to do like the throwback D, and you have to make like him making the shade of orange a bit different and the shade of blue a bit different. Like, you have to change things around a little bit. If you just slap white helmets on our plain white uniforms, then I would be against it because it would look tacky and horrible. But you take the opportunity to do a full redesign with it of like, something like I'm gonna send this to you after we finish. Something like this edit, then I'm like, yes, I want this. But I can see, like, if you're just envisioning, yep, our main, normal white uniforms, we don't do anything else to them, but we throw on a white helmet. I mean, even if the helmet had the throwback D logo and we didn't change anything else about our white uniforms, I'm not sure if I would like it as much. Like, I just don't think it would work.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you were to put like the classic Denver D on the uniform with the stripes, it'd look weird. It would look really weird. Like, the only thing that would switch it up. Yeah, the only thing that would truly just make it stand out is just like if you did the outline of it, like of the current Broncos logo, and do an outline of that like orange or blue or whatever, and you did it from there, and then you did with that white uniform, but like if it is the thing is, like, if it is that classic D, the classic Denver D, like, you almost have to have that be a new jersey. You have to have that be a new jersey because there's nothing else in the Broncos jersey repertoire, if you will, in the jersey closet that doesn't go with that, right? I mean, the only thing that does is your orange color rush. And actually, what would be really cool is if they did the all white helmet. This is a completely change instead of white, Brandon. And I know a lot of fans have been clamoring for their favorite in terms of, the all blue alternate. What if they did the all blue alternate in the color rush with some of that white on that stripes and that white helmet?
I'm having a hard time picturing this.
Like, think of
seen someone make an edit of this.
Like, think of no, but just like think of like if they did the color rush uniform that they have right now, the orange.
The orange.
They made it all blue.
Like normal blue or like powder blue?
No, the blue that's within
The
that color
navy.
rush. Yeah. But then they added the white and obviously did the color changing around. And then they did the white helmet with that color rush stripe down the middle.
I can't tell how I would feel about that. I need to see it. I have to be able to see
Yeah.
it.
Because obviously the easy answer would be that blue helmet to go with that all blue, right? But yeah, just a little bit of a change there.
Like, let me
Moving
see
on.
how good I can work on this Photoshop while we're talking about it.
Oh yeah, literally as the piece that I was just talking about. Or we can get Josh to talk about it. In terms of doing his Photoshop skills, I know he's into Photoshop. All right, so let's transition away from the football side of things, and
Go ahead.
now this isn't exactly a spoiler for Ray because we had this conversation a little bit on Sports Nonsense and Whiskey last night, but I thought that I would bring it back a little bit for you, Brandon, because I do think it's a fun conversation, and it's one that involves Shohei Ohtani and Clayton and Josh and anybody else that is watching this right now. I'm very curious what you guys feel. Shohei Ohtani, Showtime Ohtani, is just making a true name for himself in the game of baseball. Like, he is a force of nature in baseball. He's a pitcher, a dominant pitcher, a dominant hitter, in a game that is featuring the DH. If there is a sport, do you guys feel and do you guys think that there is a Shohei Ohtani that we could see in another sport, a la the NHL, NFL, NBA, so on and so forth? Or do you think that maybe we don't see a Shohei Ohtani type in the sense of playing both sides of the ball?
I want to think of one example off the top of my head of a player that's currently playing. I want to hear yours first.
Are you thinking Marcus Jones?
No.
Okay. Because I was thinking Marcus Jones because I think in preseason or something he had like a special teams touchdown, defensive touchdown, and offensive touchdown.
That's not who I'm talking about.
But go ahead. No.
I want to hear yours first. You go first.
I would say the best sport
I want to know if you hear. I want to know if you say what I'm going to say.
I'm not going to say a player, but I think the best sport for something like that to happen is the NFL, because
Really?
the NBA, the NBA, because the NBA, the NHL, it's way too fast paced for it to be for me to say that there's a Shohei Ohtani type, right?
Oh, you're gonna like my answer then. Go ahead.
I swear, if you say Nikola Jokic,
no.
And if you say Joel Embiid, I'm kicking you out of this chat right now. No, I'm curious now. Go ahead.
So the only player I can think of right now that's currently playing that is even remotely close to the same stratosphere as Shohei Ohtani, and still not. I mean, when I say close, would be Giannis.
Enlighten me.
He's not as good on, like, his defense isn't comparable to like what Shohei does on both sides, but Giannis is still a very good defensive player. He's arguably one of the best defensive players on the Bucks. He won Defensive Player of the Year 3 years ago, and he's obviously the cornerstone of that entire offense. He has some weaknesses. He does have some weaknesses, which is why, it's not a perfect analogy. I mean, his free throws is like, it's a meme. His 3-point shooting is like, but just in terms of what he does on the offensive side of the ball, what he can do on the defensive side of the ball, I think he's the closest current player.
Josh says Kawhi Leonard before injury.
Was Kawhi that good at defense before injury? I straight up don't remember.
He was really good.
I didn't really pay attention to Kawhi before he was on the Raptors, if I'm being honest.
I guess for the NBA's sake, based on the way they do awards, you can win Defensive Player of the Year and also win MVP.
Yeah,
so
Giannis did it.
So I guess there's that where you can be able to do something like that. I don't necessarily know if that's a window where the NFL would open something like that, but obviously we've never seen a Shohei Ohtani play offense and defense for a very long time. The only player, that I can recall really doing that would have been Dion, a guy that.
Go ahead.
Well, it's just offense. He really wasn't a world beater. He was okay, but he did it. And
the only three players to win Defensive Player of the Year and MVP in the same season in the NBA were Hakeem Olajuwon, Michael Jordan, and Giannis.
Okay. And we know that in terms of best athlete, Michael Jordan is surely up there because Michael Jordan's the GOAT, not LeBron James.
Right.
Or, sorry, LeFraud James.
LeFlop.
Or LeFlaud. Or
LeSwept.
LeFlop. Yeah, LeSwept James. Who's changing his number to 23 because he wants to be like Mike.
Even though he said he was not going to wear it and no one else should. I mean, recently it's been a little bit different because like Brook Lopez is in Milwaukee now and he's like an incredible, well, maybe I don't know about saying incredible, but he's a good defensive player. But I don't know. I still think like this last season, I believe it was this last season, Giannis was like basically had the best shots defended, like shots against by any defender with like in the entire NBA that's defended more than 500 shots. I'll have to see if I can go find this, but I saw that at some point during the season. Like Giannis's defense is kind of underrated. Like you just don't see it talked about as much as his offense. And like again, like I've mentioned, he has some weaknesses in his game, so he's not like the perfect. Because Shohei Ohtani just like is unbelievably elite at literally everything. Like every part of baseball is Shohei Ohtani's game, and Giannis does. He has some weaknesses. Like he's at the free throw line. you don't want to watch.
He's not Shaq, but yeah, he's.
But I don't know. I mean, that was the name that I came up with when I was thinking who in the league currently is that good on both sides.
It'd be chef's kiss. Is if it was Nikola Jokic. Is that so? Nikola Jokic is like.
I mean, Jokic is.
Is that
if you look at it, you could make an argument. You could make the argument
because, like, truly, like, if you look at it from the standpoint that like Jokic has gotten better every single year, even on both sides of the ball. Like his defense against, like the defense against Anthony Davis was stellar. Like that was really good defense, and throughout the postseason, he played great defense. But like if that is something that we see from him on a regular season basis and he wins Defensive Player of the Year and he also adds in the MVP to his name, which he clearly has too. Like I think that it's not out of the realm of possibility for Jokic to possibly be like a Shohei Ohtani. Well, because even then, like we already see something to the likes of what Jokic, like doing things that no one has ever seen a big man do in terms of being an accurate passer, being a pure scorer, being, the team first guy. Obviously, that's besides, the point, but it's just like that kind of guy that is just, he's so selfless. Like it's in where he truly makes everyone around him better. So if he goes on his upward trajectory, which is he's in his prime now, right? He's entering his prime now. I wouldn't be shocked if, Jokic, turns into that. So you're kind of convincing me more and more that between the NFL and the NBA that it's, yeah.
The only reason that I don't know if I would ever hear someone or a lot of people argue that it's Jokic, and let me preface this by saying this is a bullshit reason, but it's just because Jokic's defense isn't sexy. You don't see Jokic going up and doing the things that Aaron Gordon will do, or the things that sometimes you've seen Giannis do, or some of the things that, like, LeBron does or that Davis does. It's not flashy. And because it's not flashy, people are going to be like, oh, well, he's bad at defense. It doesn't matter how many times you tell them, like, to look at his numbers against pretty much everyone who's tried to shoot against him and how solid he's been. Like, it literally doesn't matter. No one is going to give him the respect that he deserves. You're not going to pretty much ever hear anyone make that comparison. But I mean, you can easily make the argument that Nikola Jokic is that player. I mean, currently I'm probably still going to give it to Giannis. I just think Giannis is better overall defensively. But Jokic has gotten a lot better on defense than a lot of people want to give him credit for. And it's just because he's not doing anything flashy. But if you look at the full game of, you're not even just looking, what does he do on offense? What does he do on defense? Let's say you consider, like, because I almost want to consider assists and passing its own column.
Yeah.
Like, especially in NBA, because in the NBA, you get those guys that just, like, they don't pass. They don't want to pass. It's like them or no one else. They're the ones that are just going to score, or no one else is going to score. They're not going to create those opportunities for their teammates. But Jokic isn't like that. Jokic is the guy, he's going to put up 34, but he's still going to get,
his stat pads.
He's still going to get 11 assists and, 14 rebounds. Right. But then, like, on the other side of the court, he's still, like, just quietly kind of shutting people down a little bit. So I don't know. You look at it that way, it could easily be Jokic.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's going to be certainly something to watch. But, as we said last night, the conversation of can there be another Shohei Ohtani is just the appreciation of the fact of how great Shohei Ohtani really is. And
it's still ridiculous because, like, I asked Cam this before the show. Shohei Ohtani is going to be the best MLB player in the history of the league when he retires. Like, that's just, it's already at that point. And Cam came back with, like, he's going to be top 3 all-time athletes of any position or any sport, and I don't disagree with that. But that's kind of the other reason I think you can, like, look at Ohtani and Jokic as similar, is because, like, with Jokic, again, you're literally witnessing history. You're witnessing history at what Shohei Ohtani's doing. That would be like if Tom Brady was also prime Champ Bailey at the same time.
Right. Right. Could you imagine, though, like, let's just say Deion Sanders was that elite corner and that elite wide receiver? You would literally be having the conversation about Deion being one of the best athletes of all time. I think that I would say that, like, people I think have that argument that Deion is one of the best athletes, but yeah, so I definitely think, though, that had he actually amounted to something more on offense, people would have been far more receptive to the idea of this Deion guy, because you even factor in he played baseball, right? And so, but it's a fun conversation, and it's one that I definitely enjoy having, me being a baseball guy too. But you're never going to get another Shohei Ohtani, though, in my opinion. You'll definitely get those players that may cross between being a pitcher and a hitter. But I think the thing is I love the fact it's almost like you're going backwards in the sense of, like, who you were as a player in, like, high school baseball or even, like, Little League. Because, like, in high school or even Little League, like, you were both a pitcher and you were playing outfield, and I mean, you were doing like a lot of different positions in baseball. And so the fact that they're basically having this in the pros now, where you are a pitcher and you are a hitter, right? Like it's the ideal scenario that you dream about in the backyard, throwing to your pops and striking him out, 5 times on the day and then hitting 5 bombs off your dad in the backyard. Like that's literally the things that you dream of. And Shohei Ohtani is literally doing that in the professional sports. So, yeah, it's absolutely insane. Coming up on our very next episode, we may have a special guest. It's not firm, it's not locked down just yet, but we may have a special guest joining the episode next week. He's a guy that has been on this episode before, or on the show before. The last time he was on, he decided to go on a bit of a rant, talking a little bit about the training staff that was part of the Denver Broncos, and so that was a fun episode. You guys can go back and listen to that on some of the future, places of Manely Broncos, that being Spotify and Apple or wherever you guys get your Apple podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the show. It was fantastic. I'm definitely getting ready for hockey season myself, Brad. We didn't get a chance to talk about some hockey, obviously. The Avs were certainly making some moves, but there's also the Cluster Puck podcast that's a part of the MHRT network that can also get you covered in terms of the hockey news and the hockey frenzy that is happening in this offseason right now for the Colorado Avalanche. So if you want to be sure to tune in, subscribe to that MHRT network button, and be a part of the family. And I hope you enjoyed the Manely Broncos show. But for Brandon and myself, we want to wish you a good show. Do you have any final thoughts here, Brandon?
Is it Broncos season yet?
Right. Is it Broncos?
What are we at? 70 days now?
We are literally
We're getting there.
Were you a week out from camp now? Like literally?
I think it's like a week and a half.
I think that sounds right. Well, for Brandon, myself, and to everybody that commented on this show, thank you guys so much for really taking the time out of your day to watch and listen and really enjoy the content that we put forth on Manely Broncos. We definitely enjoy it. We enjoy being a part of the MHRT network. We enjoy interacting with you guys, the listeners and watchers, if you will, of the Manely Broncos podcast right here on MHRT. Again, subscribe to MHRT, and thank you guys so much for tuning into another episode of the show.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves.